Good morning, Water's Edge. How are you this morning? It's good to see some familiar faces. My name's Cody. I was on the path I walked, condemned in darkness. Your mercy brought new life, and in your loving kindness, raised me up with Christ. Forever with you, forever by your grace I'm saved. By your grace I'm saved. Lord, you are the light that broke the darkness. You satisfy my soul when I am heartless. If ever I forget my true identity, show me who I am and help me to believe. You have bought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I made alive forever with you, forever by your grace I'm saved. By your grace I'm saved. My sin has been erased. I'll never be the same. Sing that again. My sin has been erased, and I'll never be the same. You have bought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I made alive forever with you, forever by your grace I'm saved. You have bought me back with the riches of your amazing grace and relentless love. I made alive forever with you, forever by your grace I'm saved. By your grace I'm saved.
Wow, good morning. Good start to the day, right? Let's try that again. Good start to the day, right? Yeah. Well, good morning. My name is Chad Shookman. I'm the youth director here at the Water's Edge. I want to introduce our band this morning. We've got it's the Villarreal family, right? We have Cody and Kristen and JC back on drums. They're joining us this morning and helping lead worship with us. We're grateful for their presence. So if you get a chance after the service today, to just tell them they did a wonderful job, regardless of how you feel. We got some really cool stuff going on here at the Water's Edge. This week, our middle school students are going to be heading to camp with Youth for Christ. They're going to be heading out Tuesday morning, and we're going to be going over to Camp Sunstream over somewhere in Iowa. I don't know where. We're going to have a great time. We are just grateful for the support that this church gives. Our high school kids just got back from their mission trip, and that was a huge blessing for a lot of them. I heard great stories about how it went, and now we're excited to take our middle schoolers. But all of that is really just thanks to the gifts and the giving and the support that comes from this congregation. So we just want to thank you for that. If you are interested in giving here at the Water's Edge, there's information on the screen on your online or on the screen behind me, and you can do that, or you can just go to weomaha.com/give to learn more about how you can do that. I think I've got feedback from the drum mics somewhere over here. I'm just going to give up on this. A couple of other things going on. This Wednesday is our last Wednesday for We at the Park Day. In the morning, we have our mommy meetup from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then in the evening, we've got from 6 to 8 p.m. We've got activities. We're going to do a cornhole tournament out there this week, so that'll be a blast. If you'd like to come out and join, it's for families, it's for individuals. It's a night to hang out and have fun and get to know each other and just really fellowship and hang and just have fun together, really. I don't know a better way to describe it. The last thing we want to let you know about is that our We Serve weeks are coming up. It used to be we just take one day to serve. Now we're trying to take a couple of weeks to give everybody an opportunity, and hopefully you can find a time that works for you or works for your family to go and serve. You can do that. It's going to be July 31st through August 13th. So beginning this weekend up until the weekend after for most of you that Millard and Gretna and everybody else that your schools start back up. We're going to have opportunities for you to serve both in our church and in the community, to reach out, to just let other people know who we are, where we're at, and what's going on, and that we want to make a difference around this city and to be able to serve others. The very last thing, I think this is this the very last thing, Will? Is that we've got he gave me a thumbs up, so that's good, is we do have a blood drive this Wednesday, July 27th, and that'll be here at the Water's Edge. If you'd like to know more information about that, or if you'd like to sign up for that, you can sign up at the redcross.org, and you can figure out when is going to be the best time for you to come and to donate. We are, like I said, we're excited that the Villarreals are here with us. We are excited to be able to worship together this morning, and so we'll invite you all, as you are, to stay standing. I could have just told you to sit down a little bit ago, but it's more fun when we just leave it up to chance. And so just stand as you are able, and let's continue in song and worship this morning.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. As I said at the beginning, we've been kind of Water's Edge, what did I say, adjacent for a long time. We've been serving in other churches, but we were with you all when you started, so 15-ish, right, years ago. And we were thinking about it this week. JC was dedicated at Water's Edge as a baby, and now he's taller than all of us. So we're just glad to be with you this morning. So let's together turn our hearts and our minds to the Lord in song.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I made it. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I've tried to hide. It was my tomb till I
us out.
I needed rescue, I needed saving. The chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you call me citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healer. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. 'Cause when you called my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, you can clap. It's okay. We know you're not clapping for us. We're giving praise to our God this morning. Our God is the biggest thing you can imagine, and He also draws near to each and every one of us. So let's keep that in mind as we sing. He's coming on the clouds.
It's coming on the clouds. Kings and kingdoms will bow down, and every chain will break as broken hearts declare His praise. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring in power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains. Every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before Him. So open up the gates, make way before the King of Kings. The God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring in power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains. Every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before Him. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? 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 Who can stop the Lord Almighty?
Father, we thank you that, God, you are both all-powerful, and you will also draw near to us. You are the Lion and the Lamb. God, we admit our need for you to draw near to us this morning. So would you be close? Would you meet us here? Would you help us to know just how great of a step you've made towards us? God, help us to respond to you. How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. That's good news this morning. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped out from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion God, our hope is in you this morning. Would you be here with us as we open your word? God, meet with us here. In your name, amen. Amen. Believe you can have a seat, but I really don't know.
So there's this famous story about an author. His name is Joseph Heller. If that name doesn't sound familiar to you, his book probably does. So he's the author who wrote Catch-22. Most of us were forced to read that in high school. I know I was, so you've probably read his book. Whether you enjoyed it or not, I don't know. But there's a story about him. One of his friends wrote in his obituary after he died, and it kind of circulated, this famous story. Ever since I've heard it, I think about it all the time. I've never forgotten it. But his friend wrote this story in his obituary, and he said he went to a party with Joseph Heller, the author. He went to this party at a billionaire's mansion in Long Island, New York. They got invited to this party. I guess when you're a famous author, you get invited to these things. And they're at this house, and they're walking around this billionaire's mansion. They're admiring whatever billionaires have in their mansions. I've never been in one, but I imagine it's really impressive. So they're looking at probably crystal chandeliers and marble floors and all this extravagant stuff in the mansion. And as they're walking, Heller's friend looks at him and says, "Does it ever make you kind of mad that this guy probably made more money in 24 hours just yesterday than your book Catch-22 will make in its entire existence? Doesn't that kind of bother you?" And Heller said, "Well, you know what? I have something that this guy will never have." And his friend was like, "What on earth could you possibly have that this billionaire doesn't have? And if he doesn't have it, he can just go buy it tomorrow." And Heller says, "I have the knowledge that I have enough. And this guy will never have that. I have the knowledge that I have enough." I think about this story all the time because I think about how freeing would that feel to just be totally content, to be like, I know I have enough. I'm in this billionaire's mansion. I'm looking at everything I could ever want, and it doesn't bother me because I already know I have enough. I'm content with what I have. The richest person in that billionaire's mansion that day, it was not the billionaire. It was this author that already knew he had enough. He didn't need any more than he already had. And he was just totally content. And I think that type of contentness is so rare in today's world, and it sounds so freeing. To never have to compare, to never get jealous of anybody, to not always be looking for the next thing that you need to buy or need to do or need to be, just to be totally content. Just sounds like freedom. True contentment, I think, is really, really rare these days. I think most of us would not describe ourselves as content. I think most of us probably feel like we're 2 or 3 things away from being content. If we really think about it, you say, if I just made a little bit more money, I'd be content. If my spouse started doing X, Y, Z, I would be content. If my kids stopped doing X, Y, Z, I would be content. It's like if I had the next house, once I get that promotion, once I lose 10 pounds, then I'll finally be content. I'm just 2 or 3 things away, and then I promise I'll be content. I just need these few more things. And the reality is, even if we get those 2 or 3 things that we're thinking about, we're not going to be content. Because I know some people who have all of these things, and they're still not content. They're still looking 2 or 3 things ahead, saying, okay, once I get these, then I'll be there. Contentment it's not an easy thing to find. There's very few people that when you talk to, you can tell they're totally content with what they have and where they are in life. And when you meet those people, you notice it. Because it is so rare to meet someone like that who's not looking for the next thing, but is just totally fine where they are. And one of those people that did find contentment is Paul. He wrote about it in Philippians chapter 4. And keep in mind as we read this, so when Paul wrote this, he's actually in prison. He's not in some billionaire's mansion. He didn't write a famous novel. He's in jail. But he still writes these words. In verse 6, he says, "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret to being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or want. He says, I know the secret to being content no matter what. You don't need 2 or 3 more things. You can be content right now. And I wish that the verse that came after this said, and the secret is, but that is not what it says. Paul is just telling us, I've figured out this secret. And even though I'm in prison right now, even though everything I had has been taken away, even though a lot of my friends have turned their back on me, I'm still content. I know this secret. So he writes about contentment again in 1 Timothy, and he's writing to this young pastor about how to be content and to teach people how to be content. And we get a little bit closer here to finding out what the secret is, because he didn't just tell us. So in 1 Timothy chapter 6, he says, "For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, then we will be content with that." So Paul is telling him, if you just acknowledge, okay, here's what I actually need, and everything else are just wants, if you acknowledge that and you're okay with that, you will have what you need, and you will be content. Now, we're out here in West Omaha. I think it's probably safe to say all of us in here have more than we need. If you went home and cleaned out your house and made a little giveaway pile to go to Goodwill or Salvation Army, all of us could find stuff in our house to go in that pile. We have more than we need, but I'd also be willing to bet that almost every one of us in here, if I give you a $100 gift card, you know exactly something you want to go get. We do have what we need, but we still want more. Or we want a newer, better version of something we already have because, oh man, ours isn't good enough anymore, and someone has a better one than we do. We have a house to live in, but it's not our dream house, and we wish we could remodel the kitchen, and the yard's a mess. We have a job, but we wish it paid more, and we wish we had a different title. We got to go on vacation this summer, but, my friends I saw on Facebook, their vacation was way cooler and more expensive, and they got to go out of the country. It's hard to be content these days. Where, it's not just comparison, but it's like the world is always telling us, hey, if you have this new thing, if you get this thing, then you'll be content, then you'll be happy. In ads, it's like, if you buy this makeup, you will finally feel beautiful, and then you'll be happy. If you get this new gadget or technology, oh my gosh, it's going to make your life so much easier, you're going to have so much more time, and then you'll be happy. If you get this insurance, it will protect you from mayhem, and then you will be happy, right? We know these things. That insurance is not going to protect you from mayhem. I think it's Allstate. They can't protect you from mayhem. All of these things, all these products, the promises they make to us, they cannot live up to those promises. And when they say, buy this thing, get this thing, go to this place, and then you'll be happy, they cannot keep that promise. You could get all the stuff from all the commercials and still feel unhappy and discontent. I've realized this is even way worse when you're a new parent because we're vulnerable. We're already very worried about messing our kids up. We don't know what we're doing. If you tell us that we need to buy something for our kid, we will buy it. We're too nervous. I get these ads, and it's like, you need this sensory motor control, special toy. It was designed by the world's best doctors. If you don't get it, Nolan will have horrible hand-eye coordination. I show Sam, I'm like, we have to get him this thing. We're going to mess him up. I see these things of you need to buy this special fancy white noise machine. It's got colored lights and aromatherapy, and it's a humidifier, and it's $200, and if you don't have it, I'm sorry, he just will never sleep. You have to have this in his room, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's not going to sleep. But I'm telling you, if you buy the expensive white noise machine, humidifier, aromatherapy light thing, he's still going to wake you up at 3 a.m. It promises perfect sleep, but these things are just not going to give us what they promise. It doesn't work. Paul keeps going when he's writing to Timothy in chapter 6, and he says, command those who are rich, tell those who are rich that have all this stuff to not be arrogant, and more importantly, to not put their hope in wealth. And not just wealth, to not put their hope in all this stuff, to not put their hope in the new promotion, to not put their hope in the new relationship, to not put their hope in the fancy white noise machine. All of these things are so uncertain, they make promises they can't keep. But put your hope in God, who richly provides everything for our enjoyment. Paul is telling Timothy, do not put your hope in this stuff. Do not look to these things to make you feel content. It's not going to work. The only thing that can make us feel content is God. And if we put our hope in all these other things, we're just going to be disappointed. And then we're going to have to buy the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, trying to search for something in totally the wrong direction. So there's this book called The Celebration of Discipline. It was written by Richard Foster, and this is like the book on Christian disciplines. It's one of the best, if not the very best. And in this book, he just outlines 12 disciplines that all Christians should do. And it covers like all the basic stuff, praying, read the Bible, serve, worship, all the things you would think of. But he has this really interesting one in the 12, and I don't think, I've never really heard this talked about in church. But he says it's one of the 12 important disciplines, and I think it's not in there, and we don't talk about it as much because it's a discipline that we really are not good at practicing in 2022 in America. But he talks about this spiritual discipline of simplicity. He says this discipline, practicing simplicity, is so important because when we practice simplicity, it keeps us from getting addicted to all of our stuff. When we practice simplicity, it reminds us, this stuff cannot do what it promised. Only God can do that. You don't actually need this stuff, and if you try living simply and living without it, guess what? You're going to be okay. Your kid's still going to sleep. He's still going to learn how to grab things without all this extra stuff that has made all these promises to us. And when we simplify, we reject the idea that these things are going to fulfill us, that they're going to protect us, that they're going to keep us from mayhem. And we're reminded that only God can do that. So I have a friend that actually practices simplicity. She has this system. I've heard a few people actually that practice this. It's really interesting. But her rule is if she's going to buy something new, she has to get rid of one of those things first. So if she has 7 dresses, she will always have 7 dresses. She only needs 7 dresses. So if she wants to buy a new dress, she has to pick one of her other dresses to get rid of. So she always has the same amount of stuff, and it's this reminder of what I have is enough. And simplicity does not mean never buying anything. You can't get anything new. You can't buy any more stuff. Sometimes we do need things. Sometimes we need the new dress. But we don't need more dresses. So simplicity is this reminder of what we have is already enough. We don't need more than we need. So if she wants to buy a new pair of shoes, you have to get rid of a pair of shoes. If she wants to buy a new bag, you have to get rid of a bag. If she wants to buy a water bottle, you have to get rid of 5 water bottles from that cabinet that we all have in our house that has like 50 water bottles in it. We can all simplify our water bottles. But she lives this way, and it serves as this reminder of I have everything I need. Even when I buy something new, it's not going to make me happy. It's just a necessity, and I already have everything I need at home. And then there's also this practice that she's constantly doing of giving things away, which is a spiritual practice in itself, because every time we give something away, it loses its power over us. Because we're admitting, I can live without this. I can give it away. And it's also a reminder, have you ever bought something and you're like, this is the best thing ever. I'm so excited. I've wanted this my whole life. And then like 3 months later, you're like, I don't want that anymore. I need the new one. The practice of giving things away reminds us, like, you thought this was going to be really fulfilling not long ago, and now it's in your giveaway pile. And the new thing that you're going to buy, it might seem really exciting and fulfilling right now, but guess what? A year from now, it's going to be in the giveaway pile. This stuff does not do what we think it's going to do. I remember my brother got his first car as like this white Mustang. He was so excited. It was like the best thing ever. It was an old used one that my dad found. And it was just everything he'd ever dreamed of. Oh my gosh, this is the best car. I'm so excited. Like 6 months later, he didn't want it anymore. He didn't like it. He didn't like how it rode. He didn't like there was a convertible and we lived in Iowa. He's already moved on. This thing that was like the best thing that have ever happened to him lasted 6 months before it wasn't satisfying anymore. The stuff that made us happy is eventually stuff that's going to be in the giveaway pile. So simplicity, like I said, we're not good at practicing that. We're much good at the opposite of accumulating things and accumulating not just stuff, but like things in our schedule, making our lives more complex and really busy. Simplifying is not how most of us would describe our life. So Jesus talks to us about how to do this. In Matthew chapter 6, we're right in the middle of his Sermon on the Mount, and he doesn't use the word simplicity, but as we read through it, it's really what he's encouraging us to do, is to practice simplicity, to live more simply and trust in him. So I created this little thing. I read through Matthew 6. He basically gives us a formula on how to practice simplicity. So I pulled it out. I called it the Simplicity Formula, a very creative name. But I think if we walk through like these 3 steps, it can help us live more simply. So he starts by saying, why do you worry about clothes? He's talking to this big crowd, and like really I think if he was here today, he would say these same things. It's like, why do you worry about clothes? Why do you worry about your house and your car? Why do you worry about the promotion at work? Why do you worry about how much money's in your bank account? Why do you worry about this stuff? He says, see how the flowers in the field grow? They don't labor or spin like we do. But I tell you the truth, they are more beautiful than Solomon in all his splendor. You know, Solomon was this king who had everything, yet these flowers still had it better. You know, Jesus is saying, we work so hard, we're so worried about this stuff, we want all this stuff. We labor and spin after it, but the flowers, they're just fine without it. We don't need all this stuff. So the first part of the formula, this is what Jesus gives us. We start with our life, what it looks like now, probably too full and a little complex. And he says the first thing we need to do is subtract all the unnecessary stuff. Subtract the unnecessary stuff that's building up in your life. Maybe it's like, okay, I'm buying all these expensive skincare products because I think it's going to make my face look perfect, like these models that I see on TV, and we accumulate all this extra stuff. That's unnecessary. Saying subtract that unnecessary stuff. And maybe it's not even things. I think we do a lot of unnecessary stuff that fills up our life. Like, subtract the unnecessary. If you're spending all this time people-pleasing and it's making you really busy, that's unnecessary. Subtract this unnecessary stuff in your life. So that's the first part of our formula. So then Jesus keeps going. He says, if God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and thrown in the fire, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? For the pagans run after all these things. He says, your Father in heaven already knows what you need. He already knows all this stuff that you need. And Jesus is really saying, if you think about it, not only does God already know, he's already provided everything you need. All this other extra unnecessary stuff we've just convinced ourselves we need, but we don't. God has given us everything we need. We're so busy worrying about all the stuff we don't have. We're so busy looking at the things we want that we often overlook the stuff that we already have. And Jesus is saying here, if God takes care of the grass of the field, he's going to take care of you. And in fact, he already has. And you may feel like you're lacking because you're so focused on what you don't have that you haven't had time to be grateful for what you do have. So this is the second part of our formula. Once we subtract all that unnecessary stuff, we add gratitude for the things that we do have. And gratitude, this is really probably the key to contentment. We can't find contentment without a lot of gratitude. But when we practice gratitude, we realize, okay, not only do I already have what I need, I probably actually have more than I need. And instead of always looking for the next thing that I want to buy or the next thing I want to do, maybe I should take some time to be grateful for what's already here. Be grateful for the things that we do have. And then this is the last part of his formula, and this is really probably the key to making simplicity work. This is the end of his lesson here in Matthew 6. He says, but seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. Jesus is saying, if you really want to be content, it's not just about getting rid of stuff, and it's not just about being thankful. Just seek after God instead of seeking after all this other stuff, all this unnecessary stuff. Want God more than you want anything else. Enjoy spending time with God more than you enjoy doing anything else. Want to serve God more than you want to serve yourself and get stuff for yourself. And then he says, if you do this, if you put God first, if you seek after God more than you seek after anything else, everything else will be given to you. And we read that Jesus isn't saying, if you seek after God, he'll give you all you want, he'll fulfill your whole Amazon wish list, and you'll have all these things, and you'll have the big house and the job. He's not saying that. What he means is, if we seek after God, all this unnecessary stuff, it won't matter to us anymore. And if we keep seeking after God and that's our first priority and that's what we care most about in life, we won't even want the unnecessary stuff anymore because we'll already be content with just having that relationship with God and what God has given us. We'll already be content. We won't be wanting more. We'll realize we already have everything we need. You'll realize that God is enough. So this is the last part of the formula. So we've got life, we subtract the unnecessary, we add a bunch of gratitude, and then we multiply the meaningful. When we practice simplicity, when we get rid of some of this unnecessary stuff, we have more time for the meaningful in our lives. Our lives have gotten busy and complex, and we want to do all this meaningful stuff, and we just don't have time because this unnecessary stuff has gotten in the way. And Jesus is saying, if you clear out some of that stuff and make more room for God, you're going to be like that author in the billionaire's house saying, I don't care that he has more stuff than me. I'm totally content with what I have. We're already going to have these things. And I got to say, as we've got this math equation up here, my husband is an engineer, and I know what you math people are thinking. Like, by the order of operations, you multiply first, then you go back. Let's just pretend this is not real math, okay? I was explaining this to Sam, and I knew right away that he was going to be like, well, mathematically, all right, it's not math. Just pretend we go in order. But Jesus, he gives us in the Sermon on the Mount this formula. And now that I look at it, I should have put what it equals, but what it's going to lead to is contentment. Because we've totally simplified. We've gotten rid of the unnecessary. We've become even more grateful for what we already have. We now have room in our life for all this meaningful stuff to happen. Because the only thing we're chasing after is God and his kingdom and his righteousness and serving and loving him. And all of a sudden, we're not comparing, we're not jealous, we're not feeling lacking, we're not looking over the fence for what other people have. Like, we just have this contentment, and that will totally set us free. To not be wanting anymore, to not be looking for something extra. So I came up with a few examples for myself of how we can use this formula. So I'm not a big shopper. I don't really like clothes. Like, I honestly bought this shirt like 11 years ago when I was in college, and I still wear it like once a week. You've probably noticed. But when I looked through my house, I noticed, okay, one thing that's unnecessary that I just have way too much of, I could probably get rid of, is I just have tons of shoes. I have shoes for every sport that you could possibly play, even ones I've never played before. I have shoes for every type of weather, every situation. I have shoes I've never worn before. I don't know where they came from. So if I was going to do this for myself, my equation would look something like this. Take my life, subtract a bunch of shoes that are totally unnecessary. And as I was looking through all of those last night, I realized, okay, this all started too because there's a new pair of shoes that I want that are like workout shoes. And I have convinced myself, I need these workout shoes in order to work out. I need to just start working out, and then, you know what, it'll be fine. But I saw these shoes. Okay, subtract, I have too many shoes, it's unnecessary. As I was doing that, I became really grateful for, I'm able to have all these things. And I also started to realize you do not need the new workout shoes, okay? There are shoes here, pick a pair, go work out. I became more grateful for what I have. I stopped wanting this thing that I started to realize was really unnecessary, and maybe I'd been buying all these unnecessary things for a long time. And then we can multiply the meaningful, because now I have this pile of shoes, and a lot of us have extra, but there are actually people just in this city that do not have shoes, that do not have the shoes they need. As back to school comes along, there's kids that aren't going to have a good pair of shoes to wear to school. So now I can multiply the meaning. I can take these to Open Door Mission. They help clothe and give supplies to homeless families. And those shoes can end up with probably a child, because I wear a size 6. But they can go to someone who actually needs them, where they've become extra for me. And now I've multiplied meaning from this stuff that was extra. And so this formula, it doesn't just apply to stuff. I did one more example that's not material things. But I've noticed now when I get home from work, I've got all this bottle washing and filling routine that I do now. And then I've been described affectionately as a busybody. So I never sit down. All of a sudden I'm organizing some random cabinet, and I'm reorganizing my closet, and I'm cleaning off a counter, and I find all these random chores to do. And I've realized that probably comes from a little bit of perfectionism of, my house is probably fine the way it is, but I find all these things that I need to do. And so the unnecessary that I need to subtract is that perfectionism. I do not need to wipe the counter off for the third time. It's fine. I do not need to reorganize the water bottle cabinet. It's fine. I should probably just empty it. So take my life, subtract the perfectionism. Now I can have more gratitude. Instead of looking at my house and seeing all the things that are wrong, I can just be more grateful. This is not a mess. It's not a problem. It's fine. Just because it's not perfect doesn't mean it's bad. And then because I've been practicing this and gotten rid of some of this unnecessary stuff, I've been able to multiply meaning because I'll actually hang out with Sam and Nolan at night before we go to bed. Like, my old routine was come home from work, find all this random stuff to do around the house, and then go to bed. There was no quality time, there was no conversation, there was no just sitting and like enjoying being with my family. And now that I've gotten rid of some of that unnecessary, I've simplified those few hours at night, I now have time for more meaningful things to happen. And I'm also more grateful for what's already there. So you can apply this equation that Jesus gives us to a whole bunch of things. Whatever is complex and busy and full in your life, you can apply this to. And I want to tell one more story just to end. So yesterday, we had our first block party down in Miller Park in North Omaha. So we've partnered with Abide. We've adopted this area of North Omaha. And how it works is there's a bunch of lighthouse leaders that live there. So these are people that have other full-time jobs. They don't work for Abide, but they have chosen to move down into this neighborhood intentionally to basically serve as missionaries to that neighborhood. They connect with the neighbors. They love on the kids there. They serve them. They help each other out. They're basically a light to this neighborhood. And our neighborhood, Miller Park, has really high rates of poverty and violence. And these people have chosen to move there with their families to help change those things. So yesterday we had our first block party with them. If you were there, thank you. It was so hot, but all of you stuck it out. We did some great work. We cleaned up the neighborhood a little bit. We built a deck, and then we threw this party for all the kids to come out and enjoy. And as we were there, I was talking to one of our lighthouse leaders. His name is Lynn. He was there with his kids, and his kids are grown, and so he was there with his kids and his grandkids, and they're enjoying the party. And he was telling me a little bit about his story. So he used to live off 156th. And about 20 years ago, Ron Dotzler, who started Abide, came and spoke at his church and told his story about how he was moving down into North Omaha to abide there with the people and to live as a missionary. And Lynn and his wife, they were so moved by Ron's story that they went home and they said, you know what, I think our family is supposed to go do that too. So they packed up their house, they sold it, they moved with their 4 kids down to North Omaha. He was working as an ophthalmologist at the time. He's retired now. But he packed up his whole family. He's got these little kids, and he moved down to North Omaha. He lives off 27th now, and he's in the Miller Park area. And this is just such a crazy thing to do. When I meet these people that live in the lighthouses, I'm so impressed. I'm like, oh my gosh, you moved here with your family. Like, this is not going and serving First Saturday morning. This is their life. They live in these neighborhoods. They hear gunshots at night. They've had a few things stolen off their back deck. They've lived with people that are totally different than him. Like, he could have lived out here in 156th and had a fairly comfortable life, and he traded it all to go down there. And it's just so interesting to me how people have made that decision. So he asked if I wanted a tour of his lighthouse, and I went. And the whole time he's giving the tour, I'm just like totally annoying him with all these questions. I'm so curious about how he ended up here, how he ended up doing it. I was asking him all these things. And I asked him, I was like, when you first moved down, did you ever regret it? Did you ever look back and be like, what did we just do? What did we do to our kids? Why are we living here? And he said, honestly, no. He's never regretted it. He's never missed their old way of life. He's never looked back and been like, oh man, I wish we had all that stuff again. He says, I've never for a second missed it. I thought it was important then, but once you don't have it anymore, you just don't miss it. He says, I didn't need all that stuff like I thought I did. And I was asking him, okay, so what was the hardest part of moving down here then? I know it wasn't easy. I know it hasn't all been sunshine and good times. So what's been the hardest part about this? And he said at the beginning, the hardest part was he was worried about his kids. He's like, should we have moved our kids down here? Was this a mistake? Is this going to be bad for them? Like, They're going to go to a different school now. They're, separated from their friends. They don't have a lot of the stuff that other kids have. They don't get to do a lot of the stuff that other kids were doing out in West Omaha. And he said, really, while they were young, for a while, him and his wife were still worried of, was this a mistake? Did we do something and, we've ruined our kid's childhood or we've messed up? And he said, now that his kids are grown, they're married, they have families of their own, he said, now looking back, I've realized that was the best thing we ever did for our kids. He's like, when I look at them now, they're incredibly grateful, even though they still don't have a lot. They all chose careers that they're really passionate about. They didn't care about how much they paid, and that's made them really happy. He said all of his kids are really good at interacting with people that are totally different from them, of all races and cultures and places, because they grew up in these really diverse neighborhoods. He said all of them serve and they're generous. They don't even really think about it. He says, looking back, we weren't depriving them. We were giving them everything they needed, and it's made them better people. And he kept repeating this line the whole time I was talking to him. I thought it was kind of weird because he said it 4 or 5 times. But he kept saying, I traded my retirement plan for kingdom work. I traded my retirement plan for kingdom work. And he would always say with this big smile on his face, you could tell he really believed that. He was really proud of that. And, he doesn't need to save much up for retirement now, and he hasn't spent a lot of money now that he's in this smaller house with less stuff. He doesn't really go on vacation. He just likes to spend his time in investing in people and being in the neighborhood. And he doesn't really have plans to retire. This is retirement for him, to live in North Omaha and to do this missionary work. And he says, I traded my retirement plan for kingdom work, and it was the best decision I've ever made, and I've never been happier. He doesn't feel like he's missing out. And I remember leaving his house, walking back to my car. And, honestly, as I was walking back, I was like, I feel really jealous of that guy. I'm feeling very jealous of his life. And I wasn't jealous of his house, trust me. I wasn't jealous of his car. I wasn't jealous of all the stuff he had inside. I wasn't jealous of his job or any of that thing. I think what I was jealous of is he was like that author. He was totally content. He did not have more than me, but he was happier than me. And he felt like he had more than I probably feel like most of the time. I was jealous to see that content in him. I think Lynn, as I was talking to him, just like Paul, he found the secret to being content. And it wasn't something that he had to buy or go do or acquire. It was actually getting rid of all this stuff in his life that was making him less content. And then as he got rid of all that stuff, he had all this opportunity to get closer and closer to God. And as I talked to him, I knew that he was really close to God and that's what was making him content. And that's the secret. That was the secret to being content. So as we end today, I invite you to just be in a position of prayer, and we're going to pray this prayer of simplicity. I know that not all of us are going to go home and sell our house and all our possessions and move our families down to North Omaha. But we all have more than we need. And all of our lives are pretty complex. And I know that there's at least one way this week that all of us can simplify. Maybe it's simplifying our possessions. Maybe it's simplifying our schedule. Maybe it's even just simplifying our relationship with God and returning to that. But let's go to God and let's pray this prayer of simplicity. God, we just ask you to give us faith to trust in your words and your ways more than we trust in all this stuff. Guide us to give you your burdens so that we can experience more peace. Let us stop trying to earn approval, to earn contentment, to earn happiness, and just start living with that acceptance that you've already given us. Lead us so that our actions are not our priorities, but your priorities. Give us the fulfillment and contentment that only comes from you. Keep us from chasing all these things that are not going to give us what we think they are. When we feel stuck and scattered and busy and full, give us clarity and focus to just return to you, to seek after you, and know that if we do that, you will give us everything else we need. God, as we come here today, we know our lives have become a little too complex. Help us find more simplicity this week. Amen. But thank you all for joining us this morning at the Water's Edge. We hope to see you next week for our last sermon on our Slow Rolling series.